You hear the name Pythagoras, and what do you think of? I bet it's that triangle thing, right? A theorem from math class. But what if I told you the guy behind the formula was also a philosopher, a mystic, and the founder of a super secret, disciplined community? Yeah. In this explainer, we are going way beyond the textbook to meet the real Pythagoras.
Okay, let's just jump right in. We've all seen this formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. It's clean, it's perfect, it's a rule that just works. But the man himself, the person whose name is attached to it forever, he was anything but simple. In fact, he was incredibly complex and kind of weird.
You know, we love to stick labels on people from history. It makes things easier. And for Pythagoras, the label is mathematician. But the reality? Whoa! It was so much bigger than that. He was a philosopher wrestling with life's biggest questions, a mystic exploring spiritual truths, a teacher, and even the founder of what you might call a commune, or a brotherhood. And that's where the story gets really good.
All right, so first things first, let's zoom out from that one famous formula and start building the bigger picture of who this guy actually was. This quote right here just nails it. Pythagoras wasn't some academic just scribbling equations. He was building an entire worldview. For him, it wasn't just about solving for c in a triangle. It was about finding the hidden blueprint of the entire universe.
So to really get a handle on just how radical his ideas were, we've got to go back. We need to see the world he came from and trace his journey.
So picture this. He's born on Samos, this bustling Greek island that's a hub for trade and for ideas. But it's also a time of turmoil. The story goes that he actually had to flee his home to get away from a tyrant ruler, sailing across the sea to a Greek city in southern Italy called Croton. And it's that's where he really makes his mark.
So what does he build in this new city? It wasn't just a school. No, it was something way more intense, way more organized. It was known as the Pythagorean Brotherhood.
And this brotherhood wasn't just one thing. It was this incredible mashup. It was part university, part church, part monastery, and even part political party. It was all of these things, all rolled into one, which is what made it so powerful and so strange.
And this is the part that's kind of wild. Joining up wasn't like signing up for an after-school club. It was a total commitment. It was a whole way of life with really strict rules, secret knowledge passed down from teacher to student, and a shared goal of achieving, well, a kind of moral purity.
Okay, so we've got this unusual community. But what were they all about? What did they actually believe? Well, this is where things get really fascinating, because they connected ideas that you'd never think go together.
This is their big idea, the one that changes everything. To them, numbers weren't just for counting or for doing your taxes. No. Numbers were reality. They were the literal building blocks of the entire cosmos. Math was like a secret code that, if you could crack it, would explain everything.
Which brings us right back to where we started, that theorem. But here's the kicker. They probably didn't discover it from scratch. People in earlier civilizations already knew this relationship worked. The real game changer, the big Pythagorean contribution, was proving why it was true, and then making it a pillar of their whole philosophy about the universe.
You can almost see the idea evolving in stages. First, it's just a handy rule of thumb for builders. Then the Greeks come along with their obsession for logic and demand a formal proof. And finally, the Pythagoreans take that proof and say, see, this is evidence that the whole universe is built on numbers. It's a perfect example of how genius is often about seeing old things in a completely new light.
But they were just getting started. They turned from shapes to sounds and discovered that musical harmonies, the notes that sound good together, are based on simple whole number ratios. This was mind-blowing. If numbers could explain the beauty of music, then maybe, just maybe, the movements of the planets and stars, the whole cosmos, was a kind of silent mathematical music, the music of the spheres. And then there's the soul. On top of all the math and music, they had this deep spiritual belief in what's called transmigration, that your soul is immortal, and after you die, it's reborn into a new body. This wasn't just some vague idea. It was the moral engine for their whole lifestyle. The disciplined, pure life they tried to live was all about ensuring a better go-around for the soul next time.
So you've got this amazing, elegant system. Everything is beautiful, everything is ordered, everything is explained by nice, simple, whole numbers. It's perfect, right? Well,
not exactly, because their own beloved mathematics was about to throw a giant wrench in the works.
They discovered irrational numbers, the square root of 2, for example. It sounds harmless, but for them, it was a catastrophe. Why? Because you can't write it down as a simple fraction. It's a number that goes on forever with no pattern, and if your entire universe is built on the perfection of simple number ratios, this thing was a monster. It was like finding a bug in the source code of reality, a true cosmic problem.
And that internal intellectual crisis was matched by a very real, very violent crisis from the outside world. So let's look at what happened to the Brotherhood and why their ideas survived even when they didn't.
See, when you have a group that's powerful, secretive, and has major political pull, you're going to make some enemies. And that's exactly what happened. Local rivals got scared, and that fear turned to hate. Their meeting places were attacked, and the community was violently broken apart and scattered. In a way, their own success led to their downfall.
But you can't kill an idea. The Brotherhood itself might have been crushed, but their thinking was out in the world. And their legacy is just immense. They're the ones who turned math from just a practical tool into a profound search for truth. They forged that powerful link between numbers, reality, and harmony. And their influence echoed through philosophy, music, and science for thousands of years.
What's so powerful when you look back at Pythagoras is how he saw it all as connected. For him, studying a triangle, a musical chord, and the human soul weren't different subjects. They were all just different paths to the same ultimate truth. Which really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our world today, where everything is sorted into its own separate, specialized box, what have we lost by pulling it all apart?